Hello, Real Vision viewers. Today, I'm delighted to present Arthur Breitman. Arthur is the founder of Tezos, which, as many of you may know, is one of the major Layer 1 blockchain networks. So, Arthur, welcome to Real Vision.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Great pleasure. So, before we get to the point at which you wrote and issued the 2014 paper, which outlined the vision for Tezos, can we go back through your career? It'd be good to hear where you came from. I know you've gone through finance, you've been through Goldman, Google X, Waymo. Can you just tell us your story before you founded Tezos?
Yeah. So I was born in France. I studied math and physics in France, moved to the US in around 2005. I did a master's in financial mathematics. And I worked on Wall Street, first working on startup, and then specifically on high-frequency trading at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. I was mostly market making on some commodity futures, ETFs, and then on the option desk. And then around 2015-16, I wanted a bit of a change. I went to the West Coast and worked at Google X, which then spun out Waymo, which is a branch of Alphabet or Google that develops self-driving cars. So I had the great opportunity of working on left turns on the cars, and left turns are difficult because you don't necessarily get a light that tells you can turn. So it was a super cool experience, but at the same time, Tezos, which had been a bit of a hobby side project, started becoming huge in 2016. A lot of the thesis in the 2014 papers that you mentioned around governance and smart contract security, which were mostly theoretical construct at the time, was a paper was published, just became real events such as the block wars or the DAO hack or the Ethereum fork actually shed some light on some of the ideas in the paper, and so that gave a lot of traction to Tezos. And eventually I've been focusing full-time on this project for the past 4 years.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. So I think there are really a couple of things which mark out Tezos as completely distinguished from a lot of the other layer ones that we see. I think it's fair to say you took a very different, markedly different philosophy to other layer ones. I'd like to start on the governance side of things, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about the particulars of the smart contracts and the language, Michelson, that you've put into Tezos. So can we start back there? How does Tezos differ functionally from a governance perspective to the other layer ones that we see? So like Ethereum, Polkadot.
So there's different school of thoughts in terms of what to do with a protocol and how can a protocol change. There's one point of view, which is to say that if you're going to be decentralized, then your protocol cannot change, because for it to change, someone would need the authority of asking for a change, and no one really has this authority. And so, in some sense, if you introduce a possibility for change, you introduce a possibility for capture or corruption. So change is bad. It's not a priori possible to have change in a decentralized manner. And even if you could have change, you need to guard against it, because it's most likely will be used to harm your network as opposed to innovate. And that's I don't think that anyone who is a fervent advocate of Bitcoin, for example, feels that way. But generally speaking, it is one of the dominant ideology among the Bitcoin crowd. To say no, the algorithm is what it is, and it's something that Satoshi said. The rules of the Bitcoin blockchain were set in stone when the chain was launched, and not in those exact words. And there's another school of thought, which is to say blockchains are meant to evolve, and it's fine to change the rules. We can hard fork, and the beauty of a hard fork, which is a governance model that predates, of course, blockchain. It comes from the open source world. The beauty of a hard fork is that we'll just have two versions, and then people can pick whatever they want. And one version will probably survive as a dominant one. The other one will probably Pericles through lack of network effect. But at the end of the day, people will have made a choice, so you get some sort of market choice. And the difficulty with the fork model is that it's not really a free choice, in the sense that because the entire value of a cryptocurrency comes from network effect, and it comes from using the same thing that everyone else is using, it's a shelling point. So in those networks, your incentive is not really to express your preference. It's to try to guess where everyone else is going to go. And it turns into a beauty contest. And as a result, one of the theses of the Tezos paper is that if you govern by hard fork, that gives centralizing tendencies. You don't actually protect yourself. So some people will basically have the power to coordinate those hard forks, and it can create very, very sticky shelling points. So, what can we do? Can we get innovation without getting centralization? And the idea of Tezos is precisely to do that, to say, well, blockchains are actually good coordination devices. So let's use them as a coordination device for upgrading the rules. Hence the concept of on-chain governance introduced in the Tezos paper.
Got it. So the distinction here is, when you look at how, for example, Ethereum does an upgrade, obviously it looks, I suppose, optically to us like the European Commission and the Parliament, and the sort of Commission puts up these new proposals, and then the Parliament of miners, in this case, votes on them. And what you're saying is that this mechanism is actually directly ingrained into the layer one, rather than just sort of watching where the crowd of miners goes.
Well, I don't think the miners matter at all here. Like, the miners don't vote. They're not the one that matters. The only thing that matters in a fork is who values the currency or who doesn't value the currency. The miners, they have to pay for electricity. The miners are going to chase. It's not like mining does not make a currency valuable. Mining is profitable because the currency is valuable. So miners are going to want to mine the one which has value, and that depends on what people value. So miners have almost no say. And in fact, it would be impossible for, if that was the case, it wouldn't be possible for Ethereum to hard fork to proof of stake, for example, if somehow the miners were in charge. And they're not. If you look at who's in charge, it's whoever is capable of creating a strong enough shelling point that people will say, well, yes, that would be the obvious one. If you look at an ecosystem like Ethereum today, some people who are capable of doing this are, people close to the Ethereum Foundation for historical reasons, and I don't think it makes them evil or anything like that. But I'm just saying as a matter of fact. But also exchanges. So exchanges are in a very strong position to decide which forks they are going to support and which one they will honor. But even stronger than that is all of the stablecoin issuer. So if there's a fork in Ethereum tomorrow, for example, USDC is going to have to decide where they're going to honor withdrawal. Because if you have a fork, then all of a sudden you double the supply of USDC. And so if I take one branch and I go and say, I want my tokens, and then on the other branch, I ask for my tokens, well, who gets them? And they're going to have to make a call. And all the contracts which depend on stablecoins, which is a lot of the DeFi ecosystem, is going to be completely broken if those coins are not redeemable anymore. So in some sense, there's a ton of power for anyone who issues real-world assets on the chain. And I don't expect, the thing is, like, I don't expect USDC to particularly want to wield that power. It just doesn't strike me as credible that they would start saying, like, playing Ethereum politics. But they are going to probably follow the crowd. And so whoever follows the crowd is already very, very powerful because they are going to be followed by USDC. So it creates a sort of situation where it might appear at first that no one's in charge because everyone's following everyone else. But if you follow the gradient, at the end of the day, you do have sort of like a kernel of decision-making power that exists. And that is, I think, a weakness of the forking model.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to like and subscribe for more crypto-related content. Also, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto.